So you were talking about the beginnings of the Universal Black Pages and some of the people you're working with. You already covered the idea. And then I think we hadn't talked yet about the commercial venture. Ideas, vision for turning it into a commercial venture, the seed funding, etc. Does that sound right to you as the starting point?
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead.
So the primary developer behind the Universal Black Pages was Alu Makalu, and during the Christmas holidays, 1994, is like December 1994, I wrote the first draft of a business plan for my idea, which was called Knowledge Base, which would focus on community building and outreach through these technologies. And Alu contacted me and told me about the Universal Black Pages. He had come up with a name and a concept to make it a search engine and a directory where all the reviews of sites would be written by real people, people like me and him. We would write reviews of the sites, visit them, be very familiar with them, and he was beginning to think about how to build a business around the whole idea. And he mentioned that he didn't have experience with writing a business plan. And writing a business plan is not something you have to be smart to do. It's just something you have to have the experience to do. So I told him, I don't have a lot of experience, but I have finished a draft of this plan for Knowledge Base. So that's kind of how we came together. In addition to already being part of this committee, he was the chair of the committee the year after I was the chair. First year I'm the president now, he's the chair of the committee. So we get together and decide we're going to join forces in a strategic alliance, really, of this knowledge-based concept, this Universal Black Pages concept. We'll build a company around it. We'll build a business plan. And I volunteered to be the author of the plan. So it took a few months to put all that together. Once we pulled it together through dialogue, most of which happened via email, we produced a draft of the plan. We put some financials together. And then we started to shop for support in the local college community. We connected with a professor at Morehouse, whose name was Dr. Vince Carter, who had a keen marketing interest in information technology. So he became a very good advisor. Dr. Gary May, who is now the chancellor of, oh, I've got to say the name right. I may have to come back and clean this up. He's at one of the California State Universities. He's the chancellor of one of the California State Universities. He was a young professor at Tech who agreed to be one of our advisors. So we start pulling key people into key places to help us figure out what we have. And then we start to connect to the entrepreneurial community at Georgia Tech. Tech has a business incubator called the Advanced Technology Development Center, the ATDC. They're kind of the Silicon Valley of Atlanta. We pitched to ATDC to try to have our fledgling company become one of the companies in the incubator. And we weren't successful in joining the incubator, but they did give us a fair level of access to the consultants on staff. And in particular, I got to spend a lot of time with the director of ATDC. His name was Dwight Holter. He was an attorney who was the head of ATDC. And in one of the conversations I had with him, he broke this concept down to me in a simply elegant way. He said, when you're building a company, it's like you're building a stool, and the stool's got 4 legs. And the first leg is the management leg, who's running the ship, so to speak, and who has what role and what responsibility. Then there's another leg called marketing. How are you communicating about what you're doing to your key strategic partners, your investors, all the people who need to know this story and this concept. How are you relating this concept to them? Then you've got another leg that you call technology. This is, you have developed something that gives you some strategic advantage over others. This tool will facilitate whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then the fourth leg was finance, and he said it to me just like this. He said, if the first three legs are there, then that fourth leg will come. And I kind of heard him twice. The first time he said that, and that became one of the more powerful mentoring experiences I've ever had. We were standing in front of his office when he told me all this, and maybe 2 days after he told me all of this, he retired from ATDC and left, and I never saw him again. That was the only conversation I was able to have with him. But the other thing that he told me on that day is, he told me point blank, period. He said, I don't think you guys are going to be able to make this work. Now, he didn't go into all of the whys, but what he said to me was, he said, it's clear to me what your role is in this, but I'm not sure that your role is clear to all of your partners, and I'm not sure your partners' roles were clear to all the people we presented to. So he says, do you notice that we directed all the questions to you? So I tell him, yeah, I noticed that. He said, well, we view you as the key man, so to speak, but I don't know if your partners see you as the key man. Now, this is a man with a lot of experience. I can tell he had a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and I can tell you now, he was absolutely right in what he saw. I didn't see it until he said it to me, but I would come to quickly understand the problem we were going to have is respecting everybody's role in the situation. When you're building a company around a technology, it is very easy, and I do it, it's very easy for the technologists to view their role as being more important than the person who makes the presentation, or the person who builds the strategies, the person who leads the marketing. It's easy to not value each of those roles, and that was a problem that never went away. And I would say, in summary, that was what kind of grounded us before we were able to really fly. But now, before we hit those divides, we were able to make some headway with raising investment. We raised, I can tell you, we raised about $20,000, which wasn't a lot. It was a lot to us because we raised it from a lot of the Georgia Tech alumni that we had attended grad school with, who are now employed. It was natural for us to first go to friends, family, and associates, but those were our friends, family, and associates. So we were able to raise enough money to get off the ground. Nobody's taking a salary, but that's enough money for us to find somewhere to host our site, pay for the software we need, the computers we need, get everything up and going, and spend a small amount on marketing what we were doing. So we kind of burned through that money fairly quickly. And once we started getting low on funds, that's when a lot of the cracks in the armor started to show in our relationships. And I would tell anybody now, when you are partnering to build a company, that's a marriage level partnership, and you've got to have a level of intimacy insofar as respect is concerned that will rival what I have with my wife Keisha. You've got to be that close to the people you're working with, because you're going to go through some twists and turns and some topsy-turvy experiences that will either make you stronger or it will pull you completely apart. And I can say in all candor, now it pulled us apart. It pulled us apart very quickly. So as we went our separate ways, there was still this technology, there was still this effort that we had undertaken, and we had begun to attract advertising revenue. Our largest advertiser was Microsoft. I wrote our advertising strategy, but Microsoft kind of fell into our laps because they saw what we had and they saw a use for it to support their diversity recruiting. So they became our front page advertiser, and then we figured out that we could use animated GIFs to create rotating advertisements that might have appeared to be gaudy to some of our audience, but it was a way to maximize advertising revenue in the limited space we had on each page for ads. And a lot of us wrestled with the notion of selling advertisement, and I was chief among them. I did not want to clutter our pages with advertising, but if you're not charging for connecting to the site, you're not charging membership fees, you got to monetize in some way. We went the advertising route. We now are validated that that's a legitimate revenue model, and we did some good things. We certainly did some good things, but our situation kind of fell apart before it had a chance to come together in jail.
And the chronology, so 94 is when you started this, and you got the 20,000 seed funding that year. And then the advertising you described, I think it was in your business plan or what's in Charlie's book, right? The sort of rotating, you would have like slots where the ads would rotate, right?
Yes, yes.
When did that come about?
We had advertisers probably by the middle of 1996. I'm gonna call it. I'm calling that off the top of my head. It was around 1996 where we're making some money now, and we're able to use our traffic to identify the sweet spots for advertising, which would inform the pitches that I could make. I would market our advertising opportunity a lot to fraternities and sororities, because we had a fraternities and sororities page for different fraternity and sorority chapters at schools across the country. And a lot of them took us up on advertising opportunities because a lot of small businesses grow out of fraternities and sororities and making the paraphernalia that they use in step shows and the clothing paraphernalia. We were able to sell a lot of ads to folks like that. We had a lot of art dealers who wanted to advertise their wares locally in Atlanta. We had some momentum in that area. We had some pretty good momentum that we could have gotten a little bit more out of, I think.
And so was that bringing in enough to pay yourselves salaries?
We never reached a point where we were paying ourselves. Never got to that point. Yeah.
And it was a corporation?
Yeah, it was a corporation, and I was the vice president of strategic planning, something like that. And Alou Makalou was the CEO, and we had a CTO by the name of Lawrence Ward. Those were the three primary officers. And since I was there as part of a strategic alliance with Knowledge Base, our understanding was I wasn't going to take any stock in the company, and I would kind of put it together, make it fit, define roles, help market it, and then work alongside them as the head of Knowledge Base. So I entered with the exit strategy of my ultimate vision is to be a grassroots organizer with where the internet is concerned, and the Universal Black Pages was going to be a strategic partner to me in making that vision happen. So no one ever got any salary, and we never resolved the stock ownership situation. We just dissolved it and kind of left it like it was, and we all went our separate ways. And that all happened probably mid 1997. We were all wrapped up in finito at that point. We were able to recoup most of our investors' money. I was happy about that because these were friends of mine. I raised almost all of that money. I think I raised all of that money. So it was a pressure point for me to not go belly up and waste my friends' money like that. So I was able to get them their money back.
And let's see, that you, going back to the, when you were starting it, and you were hosting it, what, just a commercial colo or something?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I think we used Netgate. That was our host. I
and
don't
I
know.
mean, knowledge,
I don't know if they're still around.
and knowledge base. So, I mean, two questions, sort of, I mean, tell a little bit about what the goals were. I mean, I think that I also read in Charles's book. A lot of it was about consulting, as I understood it. And then also, you know, why, I know that's what you really wanted to do, but say why. Why was, why were you not interested in sort of going full bore as a startup with Universal Black Pages?
Well, I am, at that point, I'm 26, 27 years old, and had begun to understand who I was by nature, who I was by interest, who I am by commitment. And a lot of what I experienced in the startup world was not for me. These are not the conversations I like having. These are not the alliances I like to create. I'm probably much more an organizer and a lover of people. And that is not what that experience ever presented itself as. And I don't think it ever became that for me. But in knowledge base, my focus there was the creation of content. We learned early on in constructing our directory that content was king on the internet. We were trying to aggregate content. I wanted to be a creator of that content, and I wanted to create content that educated and empowered. I didn't want to be a school per se, but I wanted to be someone who created tools of learning. And I say learning in a certain way because I spell learning with a capital L and a capital E, because I want to produce the kind of learning that facilitates earning, and not just earning money, but earning social capital and respect by producing solutions to the problems of our existing state. So one of those problems we have in our state is reading, writing, and counting, leading and creating and thinking. So anything I can create, whether it's a poem, whether it's a song, whether it's a graphical meme, I'm creating content that educates and empowers, and I see that vision and I'm able to create that through my ability to write and speak and create using the computer. So I knew I had momentum in that area. I didn't know what my market was going to be, but I knew my momentum, and that momentum was carrying me away from the world of startups into a world where I could help people who helped people. So my community and my fellowship ended up being with a lot of the nonprofit organizations here in Atlanta back in the mid 90s. That was who I was able to help, and I was able to help them because I saw them helping other people. So one of our earliest programs was called Project CHIP, which stands for Computer Hardware Investigation and Procurement. The CHIP kind of plays on Silicon Valley theme there. We identified sources of used computers and redistributed them from folks who no longer wanted them to folks who needed them, and we rinsed and repeated. And we did that for many years, and I think we placed probably around 1,500 computers in homes and organizations, and we identified a lot of those computers from places like Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech as an institution probably turns over their personal computing allotment maybe every other year. They get new stuff and they surplus the old stuff, and there are rules in place that say where the surplus stuff went. So I was able to understand the rules and gain control of a lot of that equipment where I would not necessarily redistribute it to somebody, but I would build a community technology center, say in Rome, Georgia, with Georgia Tech's blessing, and allow Rome, Georgia access to that older equipment. Then once they were done with it, we put it right back into Georgia Tech's hands, and then they surplus and dispose of it as they will according to their capital assets rules. And once you get into that situation, you sit down and talk to people and you understand what you can do and what you can't do, then you go ahead and do what you can do in ways that help people. And I found a lot of fulfillment in that, and that made it the place I wanted to be and where I needed to be.
Muted, sorry. In the BGSA, there were several women involved as well, right?
Yes, oh yes, yes. I would say our graduate school community was 50-50, male and female. And I know that the people I studied with tended to be female students who were very organized and very algorithmic in their thinking. A lot of the folks I studied with were software engineers, and they were very good at problem solving, especially in your esoteric subjects like random and stochastic processes and probability. I would always study with the software engineers because they were great at enumerating and visualizing enumeration in their head. That's something that I'm not that good at, but they were really good at situations just like that. Made them great study partners.
And you said there were several hundred Black graduate students total at Georgia Tech. Is that right?
Yes, but around 300.
And within that, women were, you say, close to
Probably half, about half of it.
Because yeah, I mean the BGSA was what, half men, half women, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
So talk a little bit about. I mean, obviously that's what led you there. I mean, that was a community where there was support and the people that looked like you there. But I mean, do you think? I know that completion can be an issue. Did most people graduate that went in?
Yeah, see, the attraction of tech was one, it's in Atlanta, and two, you can complete a master's in 4 quarters. Most of us had the fellowship that I mentioned, the GEM fellowship. You could finish your master's degree in 4 quarters. Now, a lot of students then stayed on for the PhD program, and now the PhD path was not quite as deterministic, but we still saw large numbers of African American students complete PhD studies at Tech. It was a tougher mountain to climb, but the BGSA played a large role in providing the emotional support and even the strategic support of connecting students with students who had already attained their PhDs and were in industry, and bringing them back to campus as speakers and just letting people see what they wanted to be. It was a simple concept, but you're able to execute that simple concept because of the connection that exists between the people who graduate and the people who are still there, and maintaining that pipeline and regular ways of fellowship and interaction, I know helped to produce a lot of success stories. Even folks who might have taken a while to finish were able to finish. And everybody who finishes inspires everybody else who is still trying to traverse that path, because it's a difficult path.
And the BGSA, that was part of the activity as well, formally or not?
Yeah, formally, yes, sir. I attended every graduation that I knew about while I was president. Like, I was an official attendee at every BGSA member's graduation, whether that's master's or PhD. And I'm hoping that's a tradition that continues some 25 years after I was there, because that show of support is a powerful one and it's a needed one.
And have it like you were involved in the peer counseling in some form at Clemson. Was there, if but was there some equivalent also?
Yeah, at Georgia Tech, they have OMED, Office of Minority Educational Development. Now, I did work as a tutor for a little while at OMED during my first year at Tech, maybe, but I did not have the time, did not have the same amount of time and same class schedule that I had at Clemson. So, as organizations, BGSA and OMED collaborate a lot. One way OMED always supported what we did is that's where we got our student data from every semester to produce the email list that allowed us to all stay in touch. That information always came from directly from OMED.
And what Georgia Tech was, I mean, there were African Americans, white students. Were there many other people of color, or pretty much?
I had a growing Latino population in the 90s that has continued to grow. And now there are, I think there's a triumvirate of organizations. There's the Black Grad Student Association, there's the Society of Hispanic and Professional Engineers, there's the Society of Black Engineers, there's the Society of Women Engineers. There are affinity groups for every minority at Tech, and I think those groups are still going pretty strong. They're very important roles.
And so the universal Black pages fit obviously within. I mean, you can, as you said, it's a way for companies to recruit, to do their diversity programs, to do recruiting. Um, you know, what was your vision for you know, making the universal Black pages both commercially viable and also a public good for Black communities?
Serving as a point of connection. A lot of what I enjoyed about working directly in management of the Universal Black Pages is I would respond anytime somebody submitted a site for inclusion in the directory. I would begin the process of communicating with them, and I enjoyed that very much because we would have famous singers who were parts of gospel groups like the Sounds of Blackness. I remember the lead singer of the Sounds of Blackness became a solo artist, and she wrote us and said, hey, I have a website promoting my first song, and I'm really nervous about stepping out here on my own and stepping away from my group. So I don't know if she had submitted her site to many other directories, but I wrote her back like ours was the only one that she had reached out to. And I had a real conversation with her. She actually wrote me back, and we were able to dialogue via email where I told her I knew all the words to all the Sounds of Blackness's songs. And it was exciting to just hear that she had stepped out on her own, and we'd do everything we could to let people know about what she had. That was a conversation that stuck out to me, and it's one of many that I had with a lot of people who became prominent. We were having people come to us because they saw us as a gateway to connecting to folks who might traditionally be disconnected, especially with something new and emerging like the internet. They saw us as a way to connect the disconnected, and that was fulfilling to be thought of that way.
And did you, you know, like Yahoo had people that were going out, I had a great name for it, but I forget, that were going out and finding new news sites and links. And some of them were specialized. Did within your group, did some of you handle more art and some handle sport, or was it more, you know, what, just take me through the process of how you would find out what was there and add new links.
All right, so most people found us.
Okay.
And a lot of people came to us to search for what else might be out there. And when we learned how to aggregate those search terms and report on them, I kind of operated as the de facto editor in chief, if you will. So we learned how to write what they called web crawlers, write code that will go out and look for certain types of sites. And then I would mimic the web crawling activity manually kind of as boots on the ground. I would go out and look for sites based on what people had been searching for, and we got very organized and efficient in doing that as a way of identifying sites that people weren't submitting. So we had it covered both ways, I think. Now, it took a lot of manpower, but we had folks who could find us, and then we had folks who couldn't find what they were looking for, but then I could go out and find what they were looking for.
And so you were using what, Lycos or InfoSeek or Yahoo?
I was a big InfoSeek fan. I thought that was, they always helped me find what I was looking for. And at the time, I didn't realize that all search engines kind of use the same command syntaxes, but I learned the command syntax of InfoSeek to do the powerful advanced searches that I'm sure you can do it on any of them now, but InfoSeek was the one I learned on, so that was the one I always used.
Yeah, and once you knew it, there's no point in. Okay, and how many? So tell me the number of links or sites you had. How did that grow over time? You started when you first. I mean, when did you first make the site public? And how? And what were you starting with? How many sites or topics?
Yeah, late '94. I'm gonna ballpark this now. We might have had 300 sites late '94. By early 1998, we might have had around 4,000. Now, these are sites that we've identified, vetted, and had a human write a review for that will let people know what they're about to go and visit when they click. So that would
the
have
high watermark was
probably about 4,000.
okay.
Yeah, and now at our end, we might have had 3,000 sites in our submission queue that we just hadn't had time to review. So what was significant about that to us is we didn't know whether or not the diaspora's presence on the internet was strong, but through the sites that we were able to review and the sites that were submitted, we could see, hey, yeah, this world is representing people of color, this new world we call the internet. We are well represented, but now what we have to do is find ways to archive and preserve, because there are lots of sites. I looked at this the other day in preparation for the interview. The last edition of the directory we published, we had begun to gray out the sites that were no longer there, but we wanted to at least make mention of them. We didn't want the user to click and see that 404 error. We would just gray the site out and say, hey, this site is no longer here, but this is what it was. This is what Cafe Los Negros was. It was a great hangout for people who loved music, and just make sure people knew that they were there. Kind of the way archive.org does. We were doing that back in the mid-90s, and I appreciated when I found out about archive.org and that they would kind of freeze a site in their time machine so that people would know it was there.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, that also showed visually how quickly things were changing.
Yeah, changing a lot.
So Charlton, we're talking about sort of the growth and the peak of the universal black pages, and I mean the number of users. I'm sure you track. Well, that was probably through some of the stuff from Jim Pitcow, right? But do you know what was the curve of that? So
I remember from our advertising literature, we might have gotten as high as 30,000 visitors in a month. Now, these aren't record-setting numbers now, but to us, that represented an exponential growth from where we started in 1994. We knew we had eyeballs coming to that site, and that we knew where the sticky places were. We knew where they would come to visit and where they would stay and where they would gravitate the most.
which were those? Where did they?
The fraternities and sororities page, by far. By far. We wouldn't have predicted that, but you don't have to predict when you've got stats. The stats tell you this is This is what people come here for.
But there was no, you guys were writing the reviews. It's not that someone could comment, and that came much later.
Yeah, we ended up taking some volunteer reviewers because we couldn't get to all that stuff ourselves now. And it would be people who would comment via email that I would reach out to and say, hey, pretty good at this. Would you like to help us write these reviews? Oh, we've got plenty. And I can only describe a site with so many words for so long. You got to have a diversity of thought there to have robust writing that people will read and enjoy and be informed by.
But I mean, like the fraternities and sororities, so people would come and they're searching. Obviously, they're not chatting, right? So, but they would spend time just going in detail through the reviews of different that you guys have done.
Yeah, because they're trying to connect to, if you're in Delta Sigma Theta, you're trying to connect to your sister chapter. If you're at Bowie State University, you're trying to connect to the chapter at Tennessee State University. You can find them in the Universal Black pages, connect, and maybe you're performing a step that they might want to borrow, or there's all kinds of connections that come out of that connection, even beyond some of the normal reasons why fraternities and sororities connect, this job connection, stuff like that. There's a lot more ways that they are coming together and getting together.
Charlton, do you want to take over?
Yeah.
I did, Derrick, you were starting to talk about some of the tensions with your co-founders, but maybe, if Charlton can take us through the tougher parts.
Yeah, that's where I thought I would pick up if you hadn't already gotten there, which is, kind of revisiting some of those moments where you clearly have a direction in terms of commercializing and looking at a business plan, getting investors. So trying to drive this in the direction that some of the folks that you're collaborating with want to go with UBP. But where does that start to fall apart in terms of tensions with your collaborators and ideas about what the next step should be, what this shouldn't be, so on and so forth?
Yeah, I don't know if I told you this when we were talking before, man, but we fell apart at our organization meeting, like our official corporate organizing meeting. And it was a very simple fissure. It just revealed, hey, there's already some cracks here, but those cracks were around roles and respect for those roles. I was telling Mark earlier, when you're part of something that's driven by technology, the technologists kind of see themselves as not part of the whole, but maybe the whole of the whole, and this going out and speaking to people, presenting and connecting, that none of that stuff is that important. So I think that kind of created some natural tension between my role as the non-technologist in the group, certainly the technology advocate and maybe the jack of all trades, but not the expert, definitely not the coder. Once we started having conversations about who was doing what, it became clear there's not a lot of respect for any of the roles that other people are doing, except for the only roles you have respect for are the roles that you are performing. And that's not how teams work. That's not how teams win. That's how teams lose, and lose precipitously when we don't respect the other fingers on the hand. That showed up at our organizational meeting, and that resulted in the resignation of one of our directors. One of the directors we had recruited resigned after the meeting because he saw that we couldn't get along. Saw it and said it.
Yep. So the fissures that came bigger and bigger.
Yep.
What year was that when that started to surface?
Yeah, the organizational meeting was mid 1996. It would have been right after we presented the company for the first time to Georgia Tech's Business Incubator, the Advanced Technology Development Center. Yeah, and I told Mark a little while ago that the director at the time, Dwight Holter, pulled me aside after our presentation and basically said, I'm not sure you guys are going to make it. Now, he didn't go into all the reasons why, but he kind of whispered to me, hey, this is what it takes to make a company work. You're building this stool. You got 4 legs on the stool. First leg is management, man. And the management is the first leg because we're looking at how you guys get along, how you guys know and walk in your roles and the authority that comes with those roles and how you respect each other's roles. See, we see all of that in the way you guys present to us. We notice you're doing all the talking. This is him telling me that you're doing all the talking and that the other guys may not necessarily like that you're doing all the talking, but they don't want to do all the talking. We see stuff like that. I said, okay.
Yep.
And he said, if this doesn't work, call me. And I told Mark, that was the last time I talked to Dwight Holter. He was gone from ATDC like a few days after that, but I was glad we had that one conversation because I went back to his successor and said, hey, things didn't work out with our company. Is there anything you guys can have me do here? And they said, what are you good at? And I tell them I'm good at databases. So they allow me to use Lotus Notes to build formal databases for all of their affinity groups, including venture capitalists. So I said, oh, so I'm going from knowing absolutely no venture capitalists to now I at least know who all the venture capitalists are that fellowship with ATDC. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to talk to me, but at least I know who they are. So I can holler at them and see if they might talk to me.
Right.
Yeah, so that became a significant experience that grew out of what was some heartbreak and some hardship where we all kind of broke up and went our separate ways.
I want to ask you about the Congressional Black Caucus meeting in '96, because I recall that being not so much as a turning point, but dovetailing around this time period where things are clearly going to split in a direction of, UBP becoming commercially successful in some way, or you channeling off at some point into, the sort of original vision that you have for yourself, which is really about the outreach, the community uplift, and that front and center. But tell us about the CBC meeting in '96. What took you there? What went on while you were in DC? And that meeting of at the time tech giants, leaders, Vanguard, etc.
All right. Well, no, what got us there was my mom lived in Maryland, in Laurel, Maryland. So we had somewhere to stay. And we were bootstrapping and didn't have cash to be spending on traveling like that. But we stayed with my mom and just drove up every day. And I don't remember whether I told you this or not. Tupac was killed. Maybe the first day we were up there. This is September 1996. That's when Tupac was killed. I don't want to call the date, but it was like September 13th or something like that. So we drove there with that haze, under that haze, like, wow, this just happened. And the African American Internet Vanguard met in this large room during the caucus, and I didn't have great feelings about that meeting. It was a lot of posturing and not a lot of direction. So you saw who all the players thought they were. You saw the people who thought they were the players, and you put names together with sites that you've written reviews for. And I don't know if that gave us an information advantage or not, but I took a lot of notes during the meeting of who I remembered, who I met, who sat next to who said what. And when we sat down and debriefed at the end of the day, I said, this was a little chaotic, right? But now we'll extract information from this and figure out who we can work with. Now, what we probably saw was there are a lot of people here that we probably can't do much with. There are a lot of people here I'm not even sure I understand what they're doing outside of just trying to leverage the internet as some commercial entity, just like they might have done when television was invented. I don't know that we're operating in the same spirit here. So you work with who you can work with, and then you wish everybody else well and leave them alone. But that's what I remember from the Congressional Black Caucus. Now that was in 1996.
I want to call out one person I know you're familiar with, and I believe you either met there, your relationship began, maybe I got the time right, which was Anita Brown.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you met Anita and kind of how your relationship formed in that meeting and then following.
Yeah, now I want to say that would have been the first time I saw her face to face, but I had talked to her online a lot because I saw her as doing something very complimentary to what we were doing. She wasn't trying to make a directory or anything, but she had the directory in her head. She knew all the people, and all the people knew her and talked to her because she was a very connected and compassionate person, very easy to talk to, and you could tell she didn't write code and she didn't write reviews. She had bidwist parties and rent parties. She was a fun person, but she was also an enthusiast. So she brought a lot of us together who probably wouldn't have known how to get together otherwise. So that would have been the first time I saw her face to face, and she was definitely somebody I spent a lot of time with there and kept in touch with after that. I've went to her house several times with the little bit of money that we had to just sit and talk with her and strategize, because her group, she called her group Black Geeks Online, and she had an email newsletter that had a serious reach. That she said she had as many as 25,000 members. Now, we never verified it. Nobody cared. Everybody knew that if you wanted to get the word out about what you were doing, you let her know and she would send out one of her email blasts. So when we wanted to feature sites, we would ask her to help with that. She would tell us about sites. She would tell us about people, and we just always clicked and worked very well together. And we were both Browns. That might have been what made the magic happen. But yeah, she's good people. Good people.
Indeed. I think I want to maybe sort of start to wrap up, at least before we start talking about some of these questions around, the present and the future, and get you to reflect a little bit on those. But moving from the CBC meeting in 96 to the next time that you're in DC in is either 98 or 2002, I believe. 99 with Clinton administration. So tell us a little bit about how you came to be there, what was different about that moment than in 96, and then how did that meeting kind of form and start to shape your outlook of what would become sort of the direction you took after that?
Well, experience is a great teacher. So I remember what happened in 96, and I said, okay, I know it's not happening in 99. I was lucky enough to be invited in 99 because we're on the tail end. I would say we're basically defunct at this point, but a young lady named Janae Roscoe, and I remember her name because now if you see what I'm pointing to directly over my finger there, that's the letter from Janae inviting me to the White House. That's how significant that was. I put that on the wall. She found us the way you found me in 2015 and said, we want you to be a part of this meeting where we're trying to let the African American internet constituency know what the Clinton administration has done and plans to do insofar as the internet is concerned. So I go to that meeting armed with knowing who's going to be there, and I've already made contact with a lot of them before we get there, so we can get together and break bread over meals and figure out where all of this is going. Because at this point, I'm fully invested in knowledge base now. And BGSI, the producers of the Universal Black Pages, that's in my rear view mirror. My clear view mirror is knowledge base and everything that knowledge base is about, educating and empowering through content. I made contact with Miss DC. Miss DC organized, Anita Brown is Miss DC. She organized a couple of dinners and put key people at key tables so we could sit and talk and fellowship. So that one was a much more strategic gathering. Now there was the usual posturing and whatnot, but now you know who the posers are and who the players are. So you stay away from the posers and you gravitate towards the players. You make sure you get time to talk and make that time meaningful. So I got a lot out of that experience. I got a lot of press out of that experience because there was a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution who got into the briefing. It was not a briefing that the press was advised about, but he got in there somehow, and I knew who he was. So I went and sat by him, and he said, "You're from Atlanta, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from Atlanta." He's like, "So do you have any recollections about what's going on here?" And I had written this manifesto before I got there. So I'm like, "Yeah, I think I can put something together for you." So I sent him the manifesto. He printed the manifesto word for word. I learned a whole lot about generating press from that experience. I had already written something for him, and he took what I had and put it in the newspaper. I couldn't have bought that much press coverage, but that I was able to leverage that into a lot for a knowledge base once I got back to Atlanta and got that much ink in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. That worked out well for us. Ended up getting us a lot of business.
Hmm.
A lot of business.
And then how does knowledge base begin to take off, and then what does it become for you?
Yeah, I told Mark earlier now, we operated some key programs. One was called CHIP, Project CHIP, Computer Hardware Investigation and Procurement. We are recycling computers before it becomes a thing, because I've identified streams of equipment that Georgia Tech turns over like every 2 years, and some of it is encumbered, like I can't give it to somebody. So the stuff that's encumbered, I build community technology centers with it and let people come to the technologies and use it in places like Rome, Georgia, and in several places in Atlanta. And those centers became a key marketing vehicle for us, where I could go to the centers and do classes, and then the classes became camps, and then I started traveling with the camps. I took the camp to Rome, I took it to Fort Valley. Another writer from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Ernest Holzendorf, began to write a lot about us, and he called me Johnny Appleseed or something like that. That stuck. I don't know if I like being called Johnny Appleseed. I didn't know who he was. Didn't know what Johnny Appleseed was. But when he called me Johnny Appleseed, that stuck in a lot of people's minds. So I get people starting to call me from all over the place saying, "Hey, I've got these computers. Can you use them?" So I get that organized, and I end up with a lot of equipment and a lot of people who want the equipment. So I start teaching people how to help me refurbish this equipment, how to help me safely move it, get it in people's hands, kind of onboard them and teach them what they have and how to do good things with it. Our camp grows. So now I've got a lot of momentum and a lot of agency that I might not have had with BGSI and the Universal Black Pages. I'm working not by myself, but I'm working with people that I've carefully chosen and carefully cultivated the types of relationships with that can survive turbulence, the turbulence that you will endure in any kind of startup entrepreneurial situation. So I figured some things out, and knowledge base is never going to be a $1 million company, right? But it's going to be a wealthy company because we're able to do what we set out to do and do it in the name of people and kind of stay true to that. So I've been able to keep that going since 1998, mostly on a part-time basis now, but I've kind of evolved into, I do a lot of shows now. I think when I talked to you for the book, I had just begun to write songs, write music, and I've got a catalog now that I perform and perform for people, like real people who pay money to come and see me. This jacket that I have on, this is one of my get-ups that I wear on stage. It's my homage to Clemson. It's an homage to the place that I come from. My family has significant Native American and German heritage, and when I wear the color orange, you can kind of see orange tones in my skin that reflect my Cherokee heritage, which I'm proud of and know a lot more about. So this jacket is more than me making some fashion statement, man. It's an important jacket, and somebody gave it to me because they thought I looked good in orange. I said, "Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea."
That was perfect, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I have a question that might be my last. I know Mark will have a few more after I've got to sign off here, but I think it was the perfect lead up to it. As you look back from Ellery to Clemson, Georgia Tech, and think about the role that you and people like you, Black folks, other people of color, at a time where our influence in that tech realm was clear and strong, for at least that moment. How have you seen that change over the years, or what's your perspective about what the role Black folks have had in both the internet and technology more broadly, as the years and decades have gone on, as you know, the business of technology has matured? Have we made progress? Are we in the same place? Backwards? What's your sense?
I am a eternal optimist, but I'm pragmatic to a fault. We can do more, but we have to cast vision, if you will, and say in our community, the connections that we seek, they're not wired. They're social, they're relationship. Real success is predicated on relationships, equipping, attitude or mindset, and leadership. And that's got to come from the vanguard of these technology movements, these political movements. We're connecting people. We're not connecting wires. We got to connect people, and we've got to connect people to resources and knowledge of self, and then skill-based knowledge that helps them leverage what they know into opportunities to grow. That hasn't changed. That's not going to change. We can stay on that MO and keep moving forward no matter what gets invented in the next 50 years.
So the future is bright from your standpoint.
Yeah. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, man. I gotta see it as bright because I'm leaving the world to her.
Indeed. What all right, I think I might take this opportunity to sign off. I got a 4 o'clock was probably a good transition point. Mark, I know you got a few more questions for Derrick, but Derrick, it was good to see you as always. Good to hear the stories again, a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to staying in touch. I'll follow up with you about this in particular and some follow-ons.
Okay. All right.
All right. Take care. Appreciate you.
Good to see you, man.
All right. Bye, Mark.
Happy holidays. To go back a little bit with knowledge base. So what was the structure though? Was it nonprofit, for profit? Who were you working with?
it began as a nonprofit, and I'm going to call it a closely held corporation now. I actually reconstituted it as a for-profit entity where I generate revenue from the sale of the computers that we don't redistribute, and revenue from the camps and other programs and the music that I create. I said, yeah, I want to create something that I can leave to my daughter. So that was an easy decision to no longer be nonprofit, where no monies can inure to any of the members through any way other than reasonable salary and fringe benefits. Okay, yeah, we don't want to be nonprofit then. We would like for this to be a for-profit entity. And most of my advisors and partners are family members, are people that I'm really tight with. Now, in continuing to learn a lesson from the Universal Black Pages days, you have to embrace people who embrace you and work with people who will work with you. And even if you've got one, two, or a few, that's enough to make significant progress happen, as long as you are in right relationship.
And so that's your main day-to-day activity.
Yeah, and I teach high school now. That's my full-time gig. Knowledge base is my uh, mission that happens while I'm teaching, and certainly for every moment that I'm away from school, I'm focused on, largely focused on performing. Now, I've written a one-man show of some of my songs that I hope empower and inspire, and some of my poetry and prose. I present it all as a one-man show that I am rehearsing for during the holidays, so that I can launch a new review during Black History Month, be on stage and perform in that role. As I get older, I am gearing my interest and my energy more so towards performing and connecting with people that way. I'm not able to do the same kind of work on the ground through programs. I'm not distributing 1,000 computers like I used to when I was younger. It's a different ball game now.
And so what are you teaching in high school?
I teach geometry. Geometry. That's the first math course that does away with the rote memorization of processes and calculations, where you have to kind of think on your feet and think through things. So that is my sweet spot. That is my niche. I am adept at teaching students how to see and say and show. That's my approach to teaching them. Got to be able to understand what their eyes are telling them, and then articulate it in words, and then do both in front of other people or to other people. Got to be able to do all of that. See, say, and show.
And I'm sure some of your early teachers you're channeling in some way when you're...
Oh, yeah. Think about Dorothy Parler all the time. Think about Yvonne Pinson. Think about Carolyn Randolph. Those are teachers that stick out, as they put a lot into me, and they gave me a lot of technique that I didn't know I had, but I remember a lot of what they taught me and how they taught me.
And will your daughter go to your school?
Yeah. The reason I started teaching is I teach in her school district, and it's a city school district, and we have one high school, so all the kids will come to that high school, including my daughter. Now, I won't be able to teach her when she is a formal student at our school, but she and I have a very close relationship. Her name is Hannah, and she is my heart and my joy. I write all of my songs with her as my audience. I am trying to speak to her about a world that her daddy has seen, that he understands some things about, that he wants to share with her, so that when the student is ready, the teacher will teach, so to speak. So even if she's not ready today, when she is ready, those words will impart something to her. Hopefully something meaningful and powerful.
Yeah, I think you gave examples of that in your own past, where people said things that resonated later.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so you got married somewhere along the way.
Yeah. I got married to Keisha on March 26, 2011. Greatest day of my life. Greatest day of my life. And she gave me Hannah. We gave each other Hannah. And she's a professor of statistics at Georgia State University. And she's getting her PhD now in education policy. So that's a journey we're on together. It's a journey I know a little bit about. So I'm hopefully of help to her as she traverses that path. And she's doing it as an adult. And there's a lot about that kind of study that adulting facilitates very well. You don't have to talk her into studying and identifying resources and being good with her time. These are things that you just learn have to happen in order for any successful venture. It's something you gotta be able to do and be able to do well. And she does it very well, very well.
And in the notes, the very, very end of Universal Black Pages was 2002, but I mean, there's nothing particularly remarkable. Tell if there's any story there, or if you've already covered it, it's fine. Just that was the decline and final end, right?
Yeah, to me, we kind of finished in 1998.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably kept it afloat alone during the year 1998 and then had some epiphanies about dividing my energies between knowledge base and keeping the Universal Black Pages afloat, and said, yeah, man, everything at some point has to end. I don't give up, Mark. Don't give up. And sometimes you have to realize, well, it's not about giving up at this point. You have to decide where you want to put your energy, because you don't have infinite energy. You've got to budget time and resource and energy and decide what's most important for you. And that's when I said, okay, probably time to just let it be. Let it be what it is.
Yeah, because Charlton in his book had printed, I think you had written in like an email in '98,
Mm-hmm.
trying to keep it going alone, which sounded pretty tough.
No, it was overwhelming, man. I mean, we were a victim of our own success, so that's not the worst thing in the world. But like I said, I don't like to give up, so I didn't want to just set it aside. I want to start it, and I want to finish it, and I want to finish it on my own terms. And you just don't get to do that a lot in this life.
So unless there's any want to turn to looking backward and forward, unless is there anything else sort of in your chronological story you wanted to talk about?
No, I'm fine. There's plenty of other stuff to talk about now, but we didn't have all day to talk about it, so that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So let's see. So I guess, I mean, Charlton touched, and it's somewhat the same, but you know, how has your thinking about the computing field changed over the decades? What will it look like a decade from now, and how about access for African Americans? So we can talk both generally and in terms of the African American community.
Well, my approach is still as simple as it was in 1994. I am very focused on using the computer almost as an employee in a manner that produces efficient work. Because efficient work begets agency. If you're able to use that computer to produce in ways that save you time, that time can then be reinvested in purposeful activity. That's how I've always seen it. That's how I've always told it and sold it. And for people of color, time is always of the essence, because we're always in situations where we are trying to close gaps and deficits in resources, and that requires time. So you've got to buy that time somewhere. And I've always seen the computer as a way to buy yourself a lot of time. Efficient use of a computer will buy you a lot of time.
And, you think access for African Americans is is it improving? You,
I teach kids every day, Mark, who do not bring pencils to school, but who always bring cell phones. And I make that point to them the way I just made it to you. And every time I make that point, it's like I'm making it for the first time. So it's not access. Access is not the issue. I would say attitude, attitude, aptitude, and the resulting altitude. Those are the issues. Those are the areas of focus for me. So I give my kids lots of stuff. I serve water. I serve snacks. I'll give them pencils if there's a legitimate need for one. But yeah, if you come into my room without a pencil and you've got a cell phone, I tell you to your face, you don't have a resource issue, you got an attitude issue. You got a priority issue. And that didn't sound nice because I don't have a nice feeling about it. But that's probably where our challenges lie the most in our communities is priority. Priority.
it's no access itself is not an issue really. It's
Not at all. Not at all.
how you use that power.
Yeah, that's another reason we stopped with the computer distribution. Cause I'm like, nah, man, we're able to get them, right? We just gotta give good counsel on what to do with them, how to do good things with them. But we've got them. We've got access to them.
And let's see, yeah. I had a great question. I just forgot. So when we get, well, obviously for young people, that's something I imagine you've thought about quite a bit in your job and your career. Well, oh, I know what it was though. Sorry. What the kind of role or the place that the Universal Black Pages filled in that era? What is the equivalent today, if anything? Is there a place that people, African Americans, can find really kind of center online?
There's not a direct replacement, but now there's some, yeah, Instagram, Twitter, or what they call Black Twitter. Those probably have, yeah, those have replaced us. Now, I don't know if they're doing as great a job as I'd like to see done, but that's what all of it has kind of morphed and manifested into. That's probably who's replaced us.
So where do the sororities and fraternities find information today?
Probably Facebook. Yeah, my kids tell me that Facebook is for older people. I didn't know that, but yeah, it is still very impactful. Even Clemson alumni and Clemson alumni who are part of the Greek community, we probably fellowship on Facebook more than anywhere else. It's seamless and it's prevalent and it's pretty easy to use.
So what advice would you have? And this is, I'll ask you the one word at the end, but what advice would you have for young people, particularly young people of color who might be interested in technical fields? Maybe not interested, but should be, or I don't know.
Do not mistake activity for achievement, just like my great grandfather told me. You have limited time, you have limited resource. That means you have no time to waste. You have no time to waste. And I get on to my students about that a lot. And I'm sure they'd tell you, they tell me I'm off topic whenever I address attitude and behavior. And I'm like, no, son, I'm right where I need to be, because I can't give you Pythagorean theorem until you show me that you want to study. Like, that's.
By the way, what your grandfather said, is that your great grandfather or your grandfather?
I'm gonna say great grandfather now. They both said it now. Probably got it from great grandfather first.
It's not the same. But just remember, Tom Bruce, who wrote the first PC browser, Cello, said, "What is it? Never confuse knowledge with thinking."
Yeah. The same church, man.
Not a few
That's just
words
a
from-
different pew.
Yeah, so if you have enough knowledge, you can do anything. So, wait a second. So, for one word, so drawing on your wealth of life experiences, what one word of advice would you give to a young innovator or entrepreneur? And can you tell, so what is the word, and can you tell a story that illustrates why you chose that word?
All right. So you want me to write the word?
Justin, should he actually hold it up if he's got the right?
Yeah, if you can, that'd be great. And then
Normally,
sign the bottom. Yeah. We usually hold it up and.
But if you write like with a big felt tip, if you got one.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, right here. Now, guys, what I don't remember is whether I have this camera mirrored. Now, it's not. It's not. It's not.
That's true. Yeah. There's a ton. We're all seeing everything.
So let's try this and see if I did it. Yeah, there we go. There we go. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. ETIRW. That's great. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, did you get it? You see it?
Yeah.
All right.
So, Justin, do you want him to hold that while? I mean,
No, that's good. And then just
Right.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, simple story, man. Nothing's gonna happen unless you write it. Because when you write it, you think about it, and you create an accountability system with yourself. You'll do it if you write it somewhere.
how would that relate for young people? Let's say you're talking to a young person.
Oh, ideas, thoughts, find ways to write these things so you can come back to them, even if it's a journal. A lot of people don't like diaries. Well, don't have a diary, have a journal. Just have somewhere where you are recording your thoughts and your ideas so that you can revisit them and remember them, especially in this hustle and bustle world we have now. You have to remember some things in order to come back to them and revisit them and continue to nurture them.
Excellent. Anything else you would like to add?
Well, I thank y'all for having me here now, because I'm very big on oral history. The community that I live in has a big oral history project going on at Kennesaw State University that chronicles the stories of the segregated schools in this area. And I have learned a lot from reading these oral histories, and I find another level of power in using the video medium to record these, because if I could hear the Reverend Warren Moon talk about how he organized the election of Marietta's first black city councilman, that is a much more powerful experience than reading his words about them. Though that reading experience was powerful too, be even more powerful if I could see him. But that technology may not have existed at scale back in the early 2000s when they started this project. So we have a lot of written oral histories, and now we're trying to build more video ones like this. So what I'm doing with you guys, I'm going to show to the folks at Kennesaw State and say these oral histories are taking root, going on in a lot of places. A lot of good work going on in a lot of places. So thank you for letting me be part of this.
It's an honor. By the way, your hometown, that sounds like there might be rich material for oral history about the story you learned in 2015.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I recorded that event, and I kept it. I just haven't done anything with it. But all the people who were part of that first group that integrated, 20 of them came back, and we sat in the same room for 5 hours and let all of them come and speak their truth. It was powerful. I recorded all of it.
Well, thank you. Justin, you can turn it off.
All right.
And then I did want to.
Recording stopped.
I wanted to ask you. Oh, and what? First, I should say, that so the transcript. Next step will be they'll send you the transcript.
Okay.
You can correct, proper names, things like that. That'd be great. You can also add. You can't change the text really, but you can add footnotes or
Gotcha.
comments.
Okay.
Annotate it, because that's often the way that people forgot to mention something or whatever, give some context, and then eventually that will go up on our website, and then the video goes up on YouTube. So it's sort of like we're hitting two different audiences. I mean, scholars, researchers tend to want the transcript. Students, journalists, ordinary public tend to like the video.
Gotcha.
So that's a sort of purposeful, splitting the audience.
Gotcha.
So the record will have, both options at the bottom.
Okay.
But then the other thing is, so we're also, we're a collecting museum. So we're very interested in collecting and preserving any materials you have that illustrate, your story and that are of interest for basically the African American web and online world.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're a pack rat or.
No, I am. I like archivist a little better than pack rat, but same thing. Same.
Well, it's pack. Yeah, I mean, you tell people it's the pack rats that build museums.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I have some stuff, man, that I think you probably would like. Yeah, I do.
And there's both. There's no rush in for eventual collecting. So certainly think of us or any other preserving institution. I mean, it could be Georgia Tech or somewhere else that does serious long-term archiving. But we're definitely interested long-term. In the short term, though, we're also doing a spotlight collection, which will be this spring, that will go with. So I don't know if Charlton told you this. This is part of the Cape War Foundation. So Lotus 123.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They funded 10 oral histories and the spotlight collection. So that's something that we're actually up to. You'll be number 6 or 7, and there's a couple more just this year. Anyway, we want materials for the spotlight collection online. So think of like a little mini exhibit.
Gotcha.
So for instance, screenshots, which Charlton had 1 or 2 in the book, but photos of people. We also collect code if anyone's preserved any of the source code or executable stuff on old floppies.
Okay.
Video, we can run video clips. I mean, obviously we might use some from the interview. We could also, if you have any old VHS cassettes or anything like that.
Yeah, so I definitely have a few of those. Yeah.
Okay.
I got some stuff, man.
And do you think there's a few things, you probably want, 3 or 4 things to show in the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah. What I did now for inspiration for the interview, I've got a monitor right here that's showing a deck of photos, a lot of which Charlton used in his book, and others that I kind of pulled together that tell my story. So I know some of what I've been looking at while I've been talking to you, you might find useful, but I've got it all archived in a folder, and I can send you a Dropbox link to the folder just so you can look through it and see what's there. Something might catch your eye, and just tell me what you want.
Excellent. And yeah, no, that's perfect. And video, you probably haven't digitized yet, right?
No, I've got a lot of stuff, man.
Oh, really?
I've got a lot of stuff. Yeah, I've been, I didn't tell those stories now, but I worked for a foundation back in '99. That same year, I went to the White House, and they bought me some archival tools that helped me start putting those video cassettes and digitizing them. They got me a camera, they got me a digitizer, a digital camera, a digitizer, and a CD burner. They bought me my first CD burner. That let me get a lot of stuff done.
Well, this is really, from a museum point of view, the dream as the person
Yeah, I got some stuff.
also archives their own history.
Yeah. My wife would be overjoyed if she heard you talking right now, because she would think I'm about to send everything in my office to you. This is my do it room, and it looks spacious, but it's kind of cramped in here because I've got stuff in here that I use a lot. And my whole video setup is just right around here, but I've got the camera frame where it looks like I've got all the space in the world in here, but it's a tiny room.
Yeah, it looks big.
Yeah, it looks big. Those are angles, man. Camera angles.
You didn't turn the camera around.
Yeah. I turn it around. I'm cramped in here, but got all the stuff that I need to get my work done. But I'll send you what I have, and then we can dialogue, because I've got plenty more. But once you gear me towards specific interest, then I definitely have some things you might find useful.
Excellent. And again, there's the short-term need for the spotlight collection, and then long-term, just think about where you want the stuff to go. And obviously, we're very interested. But I always, sometimes, like if Georgia Tech was supremely interested because it's one of their in-house things, that's okay too. Our main concern is just that things get permanently preserved. They don't end up in somebody's garage, which eventually gets thrown out or whatever. And a surprising amount of stuff, that's what happens.
Yeah.
By the way, Mitch Kapor, it's kind of the same thing on the Lotus scale, but he's got a professional archivist, and all of their stuff is like perfectly
good
preserved, which it's so rare. Plenty of these people that have made a lot of money, they could do that, but it doesn't occur to them.
But look, I'm proud to tell you I know exactly who Mitch Kapor is. I learned on Lotus 1, 2, 3, and still think it's the superior product. It just didn't stick like Excel stuck.
Oh, but was it on Apple too?
No.
Only PC, yeah.
Yeah, it's PC.
And you mentioned Notes, actually.
Yeah, Lotus Notes.
So we made Ray Ozzie was the main guy. There were three of them that wrote Notes, but we made him a fellow of the museum 2 years ago, because then he went on. He was the CTO of Microsoft, but did you ever hear of the Plato educational system?
I heard of it. I don't think I remember what it was.
Yeah, it was sort of the online world in the 70s for students, but he was inspired by that.
Right.
But yeah, but you use Notes. What did you use Notes for?
I built the databases for the technology incubator.
In Notes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Huh.
Yep, that was my one and only foray into the world of Lotus Notes, because that's what they used.
But it had a database package in it, or you?
Yeah, as far as I was concerned.
No, I interviewed Ray, but I've never actually used Notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Huh. Okay.
Well, yeah, I would say that's what I liked about it the most. Yeah, and you're building a shared database. Yeah, anybody in the office could get to it.
Yeah, because the whole thing was collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
I loved FileMaker when I did a lot of stuff in FileMaker with like web history and events and people connected to a timeline and all. I would have been happy to be a FileMaker developer. Anyway, life took over. So great. Well, really appreciate it. And so send me whatever you got. Maybe whenever it's convenient. Certainly by early next year would be great.
All right. Now, do you have any details about returning the equipment? is that going to be coming from
Oh, it's
Massimo?
Justin or you?
Yeah, that should be Massimo. He will probably send you. I'll email him and he'll send you a print, something to print, or just yeah. I think it's usually a print for FedEx or UPS. I'm not sure which system they use for shipping it back.
Yeah, FedEx. It was FedEx.
Yeah, FedEx. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then you just I guess just make sure the memory cards that you recorded on are in the camera or in the box
Yeah, so
somewhere.
I'll put them back in the camera. You think that's best?
Yeah, I think that should be fine because I'll email whoever the camera is going to. I think it's going to John, and he's going to edit or he'll check it out. He'll take the memory cards out or memory card, yeah, and he'll check it out. So
Okay, yeah, I'll make that
yeah.
happen. Do it just
But I
like
mean,
that.
is that, Justin, would that be easy for him to copy? Probably not.
Yeah, it should be pretty easy.
I don't know. Just thinking going through the mail, it wouldn't hurt to have another copy, but and he is tech savvy.
Yeah. No, I'm going to keep a copy of it now, and I would
Okay.
probably
Okay.
get you.
Perfect.
Yeah, you'd probably get it by Dropbox links faster than waiting on FedEx.
Yeah, that's true.
But we'll do
That's
both now. But yeah,
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah,
in complementary redundancy, man. I
that's
believe
awesome.
in it.
Yeah, perfect.
And Massimo, I guess, is on vacation. He's in Italy, where he's from. So the label might come. When's Massimo getting back? I forget.
Oh, I don't know. Or maybe it's coming from John. Then I'm not sure. Someone else sends the Massimo or John will send a return label, and I think you just print it out and put it back in the box.
Okay, because see now
Or
I'm leaving for my vacation tomorrow evening. So at a minimum, I wanted to send the link to somebody so that
yeah. Oh,
somebody
for
can go
sure.
ahead and download it while they wait
Yeah.
on the mail.
Okay. Yeah, there's no rush because we're all on vacation. So
Got
so,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the link and it's easy to share, do it before you go. Otherwise,
Yeah. Well, I can do that from wherever I am too now, so that'll just make sure you get it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, no
thank
worries.
you
No
so
worries.
much.
Yeah, I'm serious about this archiving thing, man. In my head, right, I work at a museum.
Nice.
No, it's really, yeah, and it's only about 1 in 10 people maybe that think that way,
Yeah,
and that is what builds museums.
yeah. No, I'm one of them. I would have a museum if I had somewhere to put it.
But it's from your own career,
Yeah.
not that you're. Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Yeah. Now, when I had space, I would keep I would keep an old Windows 3.1 machine just so I
Oh,
can show kids what it looked like.
so Ray Ozzie of Lotus Notes, when he has, because he's got infinite money, basically, he's got a museum as his office. And that is, I think, would be my dream too.
Yeah,
He's got the Plato terminal behind him and like 4 or 5 historic machines.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I would do the same. But yeah. Anyway, what's most important though is that you say that. And is there any software for still existing for the Universal Black Page?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't. Yeah, I've got all the scripts, everything that was housed at Netgate. I've got, but I don't know how easily that is to represent, like in an exhibit. I've got it though.
Oh, well, sorry. I should explain where. So our exhibits have about 2 to 4% of our collection on display, and we have almost 40,000 square feet of exhibits. So
Okay.
pretty big, 35, I guess, close to 40. So the point is, we also have a digital repository where we collect source code, compiled code, some data.
Okay, I got you.
So I'm saying, and we also work with the Internet Archive. So we're definitely interested in collecting software for its own sake. Access, if it were easy to access, sure, it's something you can link to from an online exhibit. And in fact, I would consider that for the Spotlight collection. But even if it's not, human readable in some obvious form, we're definitely interested in collecting.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, I've got stuff for you, man.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And happy holidays and New Year.
Yeah, man. You guys have a ball. Have more fun than I'm having doing absolutely nothing. I'm having a ball doing nothing. You don't get to do it often.
No, that sounds great to me.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much I'll be able to do of it, but take care. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Sign off.
All right, yeah, and I'm gonna get ready to wrap this last clip up now. It got to an hour and 35 minutes. Like, yeah, better flush it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I think we're up to. We did what, 2 hours or so? Okay, 2.5. I don't know. Great. Take care. We'll be in touch.
Okay, yeah, y'all be well now. Take care.
See you guys.
All right.
God bless.